All right, so I'm going to walk through the editing process for our podcast here. This is not necessarily the best way to edit a podcast. It is, in fact, the way that I edit our podcast. So with that caveat out of the way, we've got the project file open here from the recording of the podcast. We're doing episode 16 in this case. So when you go into File and Open and find the project file you want to open, it's going to take a couple of minutes. Just give it time, let it load, and then once it's done loading, you'll see the little scrolly bar or the circle bar that is telling you that it's loading. That will go away and you'll be ready to edit. So I've already done that, and we are here in the project file, and I'm just scrolling back through to sort of find where we started editing. So I'm going to just kind of click back here and find some silence. This looks like you might have had a little bit of a longer intro, so that's going to be me just searching around trying to find where the beginning is. Anywhere that there is decent silence to be had, we can use that. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to hit play. Yeah, there's some background noise happening, there's some things happening there, so I don't want to use that section as the silence, because if I identify that as the silence, it's going to end up being an issue. It's going to take out things I don't want it to. So let me just see if I can find where we started the episode. Alright, this looks like it might be it right here. So play that, make sure, yep, that's the silence. So the very first step in the editing process is to highlight the silence, just like that. I just clicked and dragged over the silent area right there, effect, and now we're going to do noise reduction. So this is going to remove any of the background noise that's happening that's sort of ambient within the space. I'm going to get the noise profile. The first part is identifying what is silence to the program. So I'm doing that by hitting Get Noise Profile. It now understands that that is what I want to remove from the entire track. I am then going to click over here on this empty space on the left. That is going to select the whole track. You see it turn white there. That means the whole track is selected. And then I'm going to go Effect again. Noise reduction again. It's the same selection, but this time I'm just going to come down here and hit OK. So I'm applying that noise profile, saying that is the noise I want to remove to the whole track, and I'm just going to hit OK. And then Audacity is going to go ahead and start to apply that. As you can see, it's going to take a few minutes, so we will come back when that is done. Okay, so we have removed all of the background noise from the entire episode. That is the step one of automated process. The second automated process that we're going to run is we are going to go into our chains. Now, chains are just effects that I have kind of put together into a series of events that Audacity can run all on its own, that I don't have to sit here and apply an effect and then apply another effect. For our podcast, we actually don't do a whole lot to it. We really only ever do a couple of things. So there's the podcast edit. Let me go ahead and show you what this looks like if we go in here and edit chains instead of apply. So we're going to go, I'm just going to go into edit chains and show you what the chain is. It's only two things. It is a compressor, and within the compressor you can always set up exactly what you want the compression to look like, what do you want the settings to be. This is what our settings are set at here. This is what our compressor looks like. This is how I have it set, and it should just be a matter of applying that. So that is what the compressor looks like. And then there is also a normalization. So the normalization, basically these two effects combined are helping to decrease the sort of peaks and valleys of the file, and they're also amplifying the entire file. So all of the sort of variations you see here as you go through the track, all of these sort of peaks and valleys in the process, or in the recording, will be leveled out to a certain extent, and the entire track will also be amplified to a consistent level. It won't completely eliminate the peaks and valleys. You'll still get sections that are louder and quieter. It just makes it more consistent. You could certainly do a lot more with it if you wanted to, in terms of making it super clean and super consistent across the recording. It's just not worth it to me, in my opinion. This is just this is as close as we need to be for it to sound good and to sound consistent. So in order to apply that to the track, it's just a matter of going into File, Chains, Apply Chain. Again, Podcast Edit Chain is right here, and then I'm going to apply to the current project. Once I hit that, Audacity is once again going to take it away. It's going to do the compressor. Once it's done with the compressor, it's going to normalize. And again, this can take a few minutes. So I've set it up. It's ready to go. It's doing its thing, and we will come back when it is done. Alright, so Audacity has finished applying the chain to our file, and we are done with the automated part of the process here. I'm going to turn the playback volume down a little bit, which is the audio coming out of the laptop into my headphones, just because I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to hear in the recording, in this recording that I'm doing now with the video. So I'm going to turn that down, but ultimately, now what happens is, this is the actual time-consuming part of the edit. We're going to go through, we being me, and listen to the entire thing, and see what is in here that is valuable. And if there are things that aren't valuable, I'm going to cut them out. So let's look. This is me testing the audio at the beginning. So obviously everything here is all junk, and probably well beyond this. Usually we get started recording somewhere between 3 minutes and like 15 minutes, depending on how long the part before we actually start doing the podcast is. Somewhere in there, hopefully there's a cold open that I can take out and make as part of the beginning of the track. But ultimately what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the stuff I don't want. And the only way I know what that stuff is by listening to it. So just like I did there, I'm going to hit play. It's going to go through. Obviously, I can see, this is all junk here that it's going through. It's just stuff that I was doing to get ready, get the audio going. So I know that I want to take this out. So anytime I'm identifying something I want to take out, it's as simple as clicking and dragging. I know I want to get rid of all of this. I don't know what that is yet, so I'm going to leave it. But once I have highlighted the pieces I want to get rid of, I'm literally hitting the delete key on the keyboard, and it's gone. If I have then play this, and I discover that I've made a mistake, and I want to bring it back, I can hit undo, and there it comes back. So it's really just that simple, except that I obviously have to listen to the entire track, probably multiple times, to make sure I'm taking out everything that I want. If we scroll ahead here, we can see that this track is starting at, this recording is about 55 minutes long. You can see that up here. So it's about 55 minutes, and I'm going to go through and, to start with, just take out everything I know is junk. So I can do this here. I know that's all crap. This all looks like junk as well. I can kind of click through, hit play. Yep, obviously this is us still getting ready. There's probably going to be a lot of this at the beginning, but I'm going to listen through and see if there's anything in here that I want to keep that might be valuable for the cold open. So I'm going to do a little bit of that, and I will come back with you once I find something. Alright, so I've gotten 5.5 minutes into our kind of pre-show vamping, and I've discovered that right here, at this point where I have clicked and set the cursor, or the edit line here, there's something here that I want to include in the podcast. So what that means is that everything prior to this I no longer need. So rather than click on this and drag back all the way to the beginning of the track, I can actually make that a little bit quicker by doing a selection. So I can select a region of the track, and I'm going to select from the track start to the cursor. So that is going to select everything from the beginning of the track up to that cursor point, and now I can just hit delete, and all of that goes away. Now keep in mind, for whatever reason, this is a weird thing with Audacity, is it keeps your screen where you were, even though the track now starts way back here. So I have to scroll back to the beginning. But this is the part that I actually want to include in the recording. So that's something that I want to include in the finished recording. That's probably going to be part of the cold open. So I am going to go ahead and move forward until the end of this, and then I will come back with you. Alright, so I have listened to this whole section, and I actually have discovered that in a shocking turn of events, the whole thing is really pretty good. So this line over here, I have clicked into where the intro part that I want to keep actually is. So this is where it ends, and I want to make sure that I have noted that this whole section is a part of what I want to keep. So if this is going to be the whole cold open, I want to split the track at this point right here. So I want to make sure that I know that that's the cold open piece that I'm keeping, and so I'm going to split the track right here. And the way you can do that in a few different ways. There is definitely a way to do that up here somewhere, but I have actually I may have already missed it even in looking at this, but there's a keystroke that you can use to do that, and that keystroke is Control-Shift-I believe? Nope, it's not. What is it? Control-I? Yeah, Control-I is the split track. You'll see that line got bolder right there, and if I click off of it, it still exists. It's right there. So I can then move this section of the track back and forth because I've basically cut a line right here. So, and I'm doing that just by this this move tool. This is the time shift tool. So I can shift this part of the track further down. So I'm going to probably put the music right here. This is where the intro music is going to live. So I want to have a space here that I can see where that goes. So I can go back to my selection tool. If you're ever clicking down here and you're like, why does the cursor look like this? It's because you have changed the cursor with one of these things up here. So this is your selection tool cursor. So I want to make sure I'm back on that. And now I can go back through and I can actually edit this section because I know I'm keeping this whole section, but there might be some pieces in here that I don't want to keep or I want to clean up a little bit. So for instance, this right here is a little longer of a gap than I would like, and this little pop right here I don't need. I can actually zoom in a little bit to see it a little bit better, so let's listen to that quickly. So that would be fine. That's not a long pause or a problem, but I don't need that little piece right there. I'm just going to highlight it and delete it. I can do the same word here. This is silence. I'm going to delete that too. These are very minor, pretty specific changes, or specific edits that I don't actually need to be doing, but it's just things that I do because I think that it makes the overall track sound better. So that's fine. I can keep that too. That's not a problem. I'm going to keep going through here and looking for pieces that look like something I might want to take out. So there is me stuttering. So let's listen to that one more time. Okay, so I don't love that. I sound like an idiot, and so anytime either of us sound like an idiot, I try to fix that. So now I've taken out one of my stutters. There we go. So that sounds better than it barely registers. Now I just say it barely registers. Great. So I've done that. I'm going to continue to go through. Now you see all of this. There's a lot of pausing in here. And I take out a lot of these pauses manually. There is an effect within Audacity that actually allows you to truncate silence, so you can take pieces that are silence and shorten them. I find that when I try to do that programmatically, it ends up taking out pieces that I do want, or it just sounds different than if I'm going in here and manually taking the sections out. So as tedious and time-consuming as it can tend to be, I'm just going to do that myself. Yeah, so there's a lot of pausing in there. So I'm going to take out some of these pauses. I'm going to listen to this again. So I want to keep this section. I'm going to get rid of this silence, as I was mentioning. I want to keep this section, but there's a little bit of a jump here that I don't love. So I'm going to play that again. So that all right is not necessary. The all right we don't need. So look, as that is the all right that I said, I'm going to get rid of it. Now, right, so that's better. Now I don't have that annoying right in the middle there, so I got rid of it. I shortened all of those sections down a little bit. We're going to keep going. And again, I know what this sounds like overall, so I don't have to worry about what we're saying. I just have to worry about, is everything necessary? Okay, so there's a weird like pause there that I don't need. Gonna get rid of this. So I don't need that section. So I go back to that. Okay, so I said whata, and then I cut it. And I realized after I played it that I actually need that whata in there or it doesn't make any sense. So I just did undo, and I'm going to hit play. Great, fuckstick McClown face we gotta keep. So, but I don't need this man, so I'm gonna get rid of that. And now, so there's a lot of kind of partial sentences here. Definitely don't need this desk hit and the exhale, so I'm going to get rid of that too. So this is the kind of thing that I'm doing throughout the edit. As I'm listening to these pieces, I'm trying to tighten things up. I already know I don't need this entire silence. Some of these longer pauses sometimes comedically make sense, so I might keep them. But generally speaking, those longer pauses I can take out. So I'm going to go through the whole cold open and make sure that this all sounds good, and then I will come back to you again, and we'll get started with the podcast proper. actually, one thing I do want to mention before I continue here is once you are comfortable that you have done some editing, which I definitely have, I took off all the stuff at the beginning, I've gotten the cold open started, make sure that you're saving. Save as often as possible. And generally speaking, save a new file when you start your edit. So when you start your edit, save project as, it's going to tell you that you're just saving it as an Audacity file, which we know. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to save this as just the same thing, and I'm just going to add edit. So now this is the edit file of this episode. I want to keep the regular file in case something catastrophic goes wrong with the edit. We discover that it's completely wrong for whatever reason. I want to go back to the original audio file. I don't want to save over that file in case I need to go back. So I'm going to keep the edit. Now I'm going to hit save on the edit file. That might take a minute or two to save that edit file. So I want to make sure that I'm saving in there and that I'm capturing all of my changes. Definitely save frequently. You're going to be happy you did that. Okay, so we will come back once this is done saving, and also once I have gone through the cold open to edit that. So I have edited the cold open. I've got it to where the podcast starts is right here. This is the end of the cold open, but there's one thing that I noticed that I want to address. So the very beginning here, Kelly has something that she says, but she's away from the mic. So as you can see, this is very quiet, but I want to make sure that people can hear this as the podcast is starting. So I'm going to amplify this section. So I've just highlighted it. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so I make sure to grab that where I need to. Okay, I'm going to grab it here, and I'm going to amplify this section right here. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go to Effect, and Amplify. I'm just going to turn the volume up on this section a little bit. When you hit Amplify, Audacity is going to default to the maximum value that it can add to this section without it clipping, without it going outside of the top of the volume. So I don't want it that loud. That's going to make it screaming at everyone when they start. So what I actually want to do is I want to amplify that by, let's start with 4-ish. It's not an exact science. You want to make it sort of even with the rest of the track here. So I'm actually going to go a little bit higher than that because I have a feeling it's going to need it. So that's fine, 5.2. So this is the number you care about. You're going to amplify that section of the track by a little bit more than 5 decibels. So then I'm just going to hit OK and see where it ends up. So that's a little bit better. So let me just play that. Okay, so that Kelly is just saying, where did my soda go there? That's all that I'm trying to make louder. So I'm going to play it. All right, so it can go a little bit higher than that. So we're going to go one more time. We're going to go amplify, and we're going to go another 3 or so. Let's see where that puts us. All right, that's good. I don't want to go crazy because the track's going to get really distorted. It's going to sound really strange. Context will give people more information about what she's actually saying. Okay, so I think people can hear what she's saying there, so that's all I want. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. As you've been seeing, if I want to get really close to the track, I can actually zoom in, I can zoom back out. Kind of wherever you're comfortable with is where you should stay in the view. So that is that. The cold open is now done. So that is the first couple of minutes of the podcast. It's the cold open. This first part is always the part that takes the longest. Figuring out where the recording starts, getting that cold open settled, figuring out what of that I'm going to take. We've gotten to the point now in recording the podcast that we're pretty efficient with what is actually in the show, and from this point on I'm just taking out silences and trying to sort of get rid of the little pauses or hiccups that we've had throughout, or if there's something that we decided we wanted to cut while we were recording, make sure I take that out. So now the fun begins. So I'm going to go through the rest of the track and I'm going to listen for any pauses, listen for any screw-ups. I'm going to take those out again just by highlighting and deleting, and then I will come back to you when I have something else to share. Alright, so I have made it to the end of the podcast. I've gone through the entire podcast, I've taken out some pauses, I've taken out some sections that were flubs or whatever, and I've gotten to the end. Here is where the outro is, and then I did another Control-I to split the track again, because there were some things we talked about after that I thought were funny. So this becomes the sort of outro after the music, this section here. And again, I can move these by clicking on the time shift tool here. And so the next step, and again I have been saving, obviously, file, save project. I've been doing that regularly. It doesn't really look like it's doing anything, but it is saving. Once you've saved it the first time, that's the time that it takes a little while to save, and then every other time you save it should be pretty quick. So the next step here, now that I've got the entire podcast track, and as you can see, it started out 55 minutes, and even with and there's a couple of few second cuts in there, those track cuts there. 42. So this one is actually pretty efficient. Went from 55 to 42 or so that's pretty good. The next step is to add the music track. So in order to do that, I'm going to go into my files here, and I'm going to go into Bitter Coffee, and I'm going to grab the Bitter Coffee music track. So there it is right there. I'm going to open that in a new Audacity window. Just going to double click on it, going to open it up. So this is the track for our intro and outro music. So this is the outro section. The intro section is here. I have this big cut in the middle just to sort of put them roughly where they go. And the way Audacity lets you do this is you just go ahead and click on here on the left again to select the whole track. You're going to copy. I'm just hitting Control-C right there to copy that whole thing. And now I'm going to go back to the episode. I'm going to click here. And then I'm just going to Control-V. And it's going to paste in a new track down here that has that intro and outro track in it. So in order to move this, I'm going to click into this track once just to reset the cursor. I'm going to grab that time shift tool, and I'm just going to shift this over to where the break is after the cold open. So I'm going to actually jump out a little bit zoom-wise because this will be much quicker this way. I'm just going to minimize, minimize, minimize. There's my jump right there. There's my cut where the cold open stops. I'm just going to line that up. And now I'm going to click on the selection tool again so I can zoom in. It's going to zoom wherever you're selected, wherever your kind of selection tool is positioned. So put that where you want to zoom in and then just zoom right in. And so here is where the cold open stops, the music starts. I try to overlap these as best as I can so that as soon as we stop talking, the music starts, just because that's a better sound, I think. And then I'm going to slide the track over. Okay, so I did this on purpose because this happens to me all the time. You notice that this will not move over any further. Well, what's going on with that? Well, the reason that won't move over any further is because I have another cut at the end of the track for where the outro section is, and now these are abutting each other. So if I move this over, I can then move this further, but I can't move it past there because then those tracks would overlap. So I'm going to take the cold close, I'm going to shift it back over here. Cold close, not a real thing, but that's what we call it. And then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to zoom back in to this section, and then I'm going to move this out. All right, and so the way that I overlap these is usually just by eye, but as you can see right here is where the fade out starts for kind of fading into the actual track, the podcast track. So I'm going to move this to right about here. As this starts to fade out, our voices are going to come in. So just the way that this is balanced, if I play this right now, you will notice that the music track is, and you can see it in the waveform, but the music track is actually much louder than the audio track. So if I play this, that probably blew out your eardrums, and I'm apologizing for that now. I should have said that in advance, but this is much louder. So in order to turn the volume of an entire track down, I can come over here to this sort of gain area, and I can lower the gain on this. And I usually put it right at about 10 decibels, and then it usually balances out pretty well. So you can hear those are pretty well even in terms of volume. And I always like to check how we come in. There's a woo in our intro track, so I like to make sure that we are positioned after the woo. I'm actually going to shift this down just slightly more. Play that again. Went a little too far. Judgment call, but I'm going to move it there. So that's about right. Now, go back to the end, all the way over here. Here is the outro music. So let me zoom back out. I got the selection tool already there. And now, after we are doing the outro for the podcast, we have that outro music. I'm going to move the section that's going after the music back a little bit. Back to my selection tool. I'm going to zoom back in. And now we can sort of start playing with where these fall. The outro recording part actually goes at the very end of the music. This should happen, this is again, where this track fade in stops is right at that kind of woo part in the music. So I like to make sure that's definitely after we've stopped talking. So put that right about there, put this right about here. And again, this is a little bit of sort of guess and check. So I'm going to go here, play this. So that sounds pretty good. And then the music fades out, and then the outro section starts. Yeah, so there you go. So that is now positioned properly. One word of warning. If you have selected this whole track and you start moving things around, this is going to move both the outro and the intro. So when you're moving these sections, make sure that you're not, the whole thing's not highlighted. You're just moving this one section, like here. So, all right, that's all positioned. Everything looks good. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the track, make sure nothing weird happened back here. All right, so you've got your whole track, your intro, your outro music, that's all set. Everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and save this one more time, save project. Now the Audacity version of this is now saved. So if I wanted to come in and make any more edits in Audacity, I could do it at this point from this version of the track. Now, in order to get this actually into a state where I can upload it to our audio host, it needs to be exported as an MP3. And that just happens here. Export as MP3. I always do a test upload first, save the track. Co-host and I will review it to make sure we're both happy with how it sounds before I actually go in and change all of the tags and everything. So we save the edit. I'm going to back out of finished episodes because this isn't a finished episode just yet. I'm going to go back into the main directory and then save this MP3 file. So once you hit save, it's going to come up with sort of the preset audio tags, the file tags that are in here. I have it preset, just I did it at episode 10, so it just defaults to episode 10. Going to change it to 16. Once I'm finished and ready to go in terms of the description and all that stuff, I will put it in the comments. But again, this is just the test file that I'm going to save. The process will be exactly the same when we do the finished file, except that I will change the comments in here to make sure that there's a description of the show. Just haven't written that yet, so I haven't bothered to put that here. So once I've got the tags in there as I want them, just hit OK. And now it's going to export as an MP3. One of those things that takes a little bit of time. But once the MP3 is exported and saved in that folder, that is essentially it. That's the entire process of getting the show into a state that it's ready to upload. So I hope that some of that has been helpful. Happy to answer any questions in the comments. And yeah, that's the entire process of editing Bitter Coffee. Thanks for watching.